Hello and welcome to the Uprising Show. And today I have a very special guest. He is a professor at Duke University and he is also involved as a co-founder in multiple companies and also on the boards of several other companies in biotech research. So this is going to be a very special episode, and all that he has accomplished at a very young age. He's only 32. Meet Pranam. Pranam, give it a minute to introduce yourself in your own words, please.
Yeah, hi Vivek. Thanks so much for having me. As you mentioned, so my name is Pranam. I'm a professor at Duke University. My research is in the interface of using generative AI to design new therapeutic platforms. And as a result of that, we've been able to do a lot of really exciting tool development and technology development in biotech, from developing new gene editing tools to being able to create new cell types from stem cells. And now we're working on curing various diseases. Last thing I will also say is, as you mentioned, I've started a few companies, Gameto being the first, to which focuses on the design of ovarian cells from stem cells that allows us to then mature immature eggs to be fertilizable. And actually, fun story, I'll just say, we just had our first Gameto baby born a few weeks ago. So I guess this is kind of the first time to be able to announce that. And the second company, UbiquiTx, which focuses on cancer therapeutics, and using algorithms to design those. So really excited to do all this work, Vivek, and excited to talk more about it over the next few minutes, an hour.
Yeah. Before we go into the professional side, of course, you've been at the cutting edge of genetic engineering and AI-driven biology for years. But let's rewind a bit. Before Duke, before MIT, before biotech startups, where were you born and raised? Were either of your parents in the similar fields as you?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, not that kind of a long journey, but my parents are from India. They came in the 80s and they were both scientists. So my dad was a chemist, my mom was a biologist. They came for their education and they decided to stay. And my twin sister and I were born in 1992. We lived we're from Georgia, so we were pretty much raised in a town about 100 miles southwest of Atlanta. We grew up there. We went to high school there. Got really excited about science and technology, but I was always so interested in a lot of other fields as well. In fact, when I went to college, I started my first 2 years at Dartmouth College, where I was studying religion, and then I decided to transfer after 2 years, saying, "Hey, I think this was interesting, but now I want to study science again." So I transferred to MIT and did my undergrad, master's, and PhD there. So yeah, it's been a kind of an interesting journey. Growing up in Georgia, studying about other people's backgrounds, studying religion, but then switching back to science and doing kind of cool science now, and I'm excited to be doing that.
I'm very curious that having parents in science background and then you ended up studying religion. How that happened?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that, it's not normal, but my parents were always very open-minded in terms of how to, becoming friends with people who are very different. And so when I was growing up, I was in, a town on the border of Alabama and Georgia. And so you can imagine there's a lot of people who are Southern Baptists and other religions. Hated books like the Bible, the Quran, the Torah. And then I was like, well, after I've read all these texts, the next thing to do is study religion academically and understand them. So therefore, that's why I studied religion. So it was more curiosity driven, Vivek. But at the end of the day, I definitely felt science was the best way for me to understand the world. And so that's why I decided to move back to that.
Wow. Yeah. Yes. you have a rare combination of expertise in AI, molecular biology, and biotech. And I don't personally, I don't think I know many people with this combination. So, did you always know this was the path you would take, or was there a moment and an experiment, professor, or a problem that set you on this trajectory?
Vivek, I think I may have lost you there. Can you hear me?
Oh, all right. So you have a rare combination of expertise in AI, molecular biology, and biotech. I personally know very few people. So did you always know this was the path you would take? Or was there a moment, an experiment, a professor, or a problem that set you on this trajectory?
Yeah, it's a great question. Honestly, I've been reflecting on this path and journey a lot recently. And really, I feel that the reason I took this bet, if you can imagine, that AI will transform biotechnology, it all came back to when I was an undergrad at MIT, and I had to decide what I needed to major in. I just came from a religion major, as I told you, right? And I was like, well, should I study material science? Should I study computer science? Should I study, like nuclear engineering? But I knew what I wanted to do, Vivek, was to solve as many of the big world problems as I could. Therapeutics, obviously, disease, climate change, sustainability, all of those, great, outcomes. But what tool would be the best one that could give me the broadest ability to solve them? And for me, it was biology. Clearly, it was biotechnology, right? You could cure diseases, obviously, biology. Two, energy. There's bioenergy solutions. There's bioethanols, all of that. Agriculture, food security. I could go on, especially with gene editing and those tools. But these are hard problems. And so you cannot just rely on biotechnology to just magically solve them by itself. And so I really felt you needed to mix something with biology to make it more powerful. And at first I really thought it was going to be like material science. Then I realized that may be a little too limited. And then I was like, okay, it's probably going to be computer science because, the ability to search large spaces for solutions is so fast with computational methods. And so that's why when I moved to MIT from Dartmouth, I pretty much dived deep into learning algorithmic theory, understanding how to design new generative models, to design new molecules. Now, AI was bad at that point, Vivek. That was like 2015, 14, and 2016. So AI was not very good, but that gave me the foundation to continually develop algorithmically, do research in that area, but also to learn biology techniques and tools. And when I went in my PhD, it was clear that I needed to start to integrate those two methods together. So it came down to that bet. And now as a lab and my companies, we're able to solve a ton of different problems, right? We're working on therapeutics, obviously. We're working on heavy metal binding, PFAS degradation, a chemical pollution, IVF for female fertility. So as you can see, I think the combination of computer science and biotechnology has been able to yield pretty exciting outcomes.
Yeah, I think one thing is very clear and proven by now is the superpower of AI in general is the diagnostic nature of like going through zillions of sets of data sets and just come out with output almost in fraction of seconds. And that has been a game changer in not only on research and everything, but also just like any field, right? Like that's what it is. I mean, to give an example, like I built this media company, TopHealth.care, and this is the podcast that we have it on this network. Um, this would not be possible to be such a lean operation until we were like in pre-AI era. And we do a lot of search from like even the talk track and stuff that we have it. We build proprietary stuff on the back end. Now we go through internet, go through our guest profiles, and then come up with a talk track that we want to ask questions. And then also even those we grade in terms of customer insights, virality, audience building, all those parameters. So it is crazy because all these things a decade ago when I was still, leading marketing for another company, and it was way different. We have to do everything manually and go through all that stuff. And now we can do it just once we build all those things. So this is total game changer. And science in general is because a lot of it is pattern recognition and data processing
Correct.
is just like so much powerful. I
No,
mean, I can't even say.
no, absolutely. I think that's the cool part, right? The inspiration from seeing what AI's done for other fields, right? In communications, in journalism, in others, and in video generation, image generation, that helped me to ask the question, why couldn't AI, similar algorithms, be useful to solve these, more biologically inspired questions? And yeah, as impressed as you are, Vivek, with AI in fields outside of biology and biotech, I'm just as impressed in biotechnology how those tools have translated. So, what we do in the lab is, of course, we develop new algorithms as well. We try to stay at the forefront of the theory of AI, but even the current methods, right? Your generative models, large language models, those same principles that are good for text generation, for organization, for image generation, those same algorithms have been so good at designing molecules that can cure a pediatric cancer, or produce proteins that can bind heavy metals and reduce pollution. Crazy, right? I'm so impressed with how math has translated so well into real world life.
Yeah, it's almost like we just jumped a few years in our evolution, and which is great. It's for the great, and it's so much. It's going to change, and there is we are at the cusp of even taking this at multiple level of speed to take it forward.
Yeah. Think about just 1 year ago, where you and I probably were using some form of the earlier AI models. That's just 1 year ago. And we were like, those are good. They were making mistakes, right? Large language models. But now look where we are. We have, the release of DeepSeek, of the new ChatGPT, of deep research. This in 1 year, we've almost spanned a lifetime of technological advancements just at the hands. And you know what, Vivek? I teach my spring semester class at Duke. I teach generative models. I teach one of Duke's main classes in generative AI, and really, it just comes down to a few math tricks, right? Just a few algorithms were the reason why we went from kind of poor AI, like AI was there, but it wasn't very strong. It was used for predictions and all of that, to getting very good at generative modeling and predictive modeling. It just was a few math tricks. And now I think about it, how those few math tricks, those few insights from those computer scientists has transformed everything that we do today. So cool.
Yeah. Really, really fascinating times. So you were instrumental in developing some of the broadest and the safest CRISPR enzymes. So first of all, I want you to tell our listeners what it is, so everyone can understand. And then looking back at your PhD at MIT, what was the biggest breakthrough moment where you knew that this could change the world?
Yeah, no, and gene editing has been one of the greatest technologies of the last few decades. It's going to allow us to not only fix and cure genetic diseases, but to grow better crops, to improve bioenergy solutions, change our environment, and all that. But one problem that was present when I started my PhD was that we actually couldn't hit a lot of DNA sequences. So there were a lot of genes that needed to be fixed, but only a fraction of them with CRISPR was able to be fixed. And so that was the problem that I wanted to solve. It was hard. I mean, of course, it's not something that you can just magically do, but what the real breakthrough was the development, and you'll hear this a lot from me, was the development of an algorithm that was able to allow us to discover new CRISPR enzymes that allowed us to edit more genes, right? So there's an algorithm to a protein, which is, how I've always built kind of my research, that allowed us to then say, okay, now we want to edit the Huntington loci that causes Huntington's disease, Rett syndrome, spinal muscular atrophy, all these diseases. Now the enzymes we made just by coming out of the algorithm were good enough, were broad enough to be able to fix those genes. So for me, that moment really inspired this concept that, hey, algorithms, like you said, Vivek, you said it perfectly. Algorithms allow us to search a space that is really broad for solutions. And in this case, the solution just happened to be a gene editing enzyme. And that those algorithms allowed us to find the perfect enzymes that could fix and cure these genetic diseases. And so I'm super excited. I think one of our enzymes right now is going into a clinical trial for a genetic disease. So we're really excited to see the results of that clinical trial. But who knew, right? Like, I was just a little grad student at MIT, working in a basement lab, working with some amazing other scientists building this algorithm. And now, maybe we're going to be able to actually fix and cure some diseases with that. So yeah, amazing stuff, I think.
Wow. Okay, everyone knows about genome editing, but
Yeah.
I also learned something, proteome editing in a new frontier. What is that? How does it work? And how is it a game changer?
It's such a great question. And it's a field that I think I'm trying to, pioneer right now, right? We're trying to make this a thing. So, in gene editing, your goal is to do two things. You need to target the gene, you need to hit the gene, and then you need to fix it, right? There's two things. But in protein editing, the thing is, most diseases are not caused by a gene or DNA. It's caused by a protein, right? DNA goes from DNA to RNA to protein. So DNA is just the code for the protein. But the thing that actually messes up is the protein itself. And so what we want to do is say, can I target a disease-causing protein? Can I bind to it? Can I hit it? And once I hit it, can I change it such that it no longer causes a disease, right? So the concept is identical to how we did CRISPR, but here's a problem. To design the thing that binds to the DNA is quite easy. It's actually really easy. It's just this. It's literally like a matching algorithm. It's very straightforward. But for proteins are really weird. They are very disordered. They're very diverse. They just sometimes they can look like spaghetti. And so to bind to a protein is really complex. And that is where we need to develop much more sophisticated algorithms. And really, it was the advent of new generative AI methods that we've developed that allowed us to say, okay, here's a protein that causes this pediatric cancer. We know it's there, but we don't know how to model it. And if I use standard pharmaceutical methods, we have no chance. And so I feed that sequence into an algorithm. The algorithm will generate something that binds to it. We'll put it in the lab and we'll show that not only can we bind to that protein, we can remove it. And that's given us the ability to get rid of disease-causing proteins, to keep proteins that you need, right? As well as to go after other targets, right? Not just proteins, but metals, chemicals, right? Other DNA sequences. And so I really think proteome editing is going to have a bigger impact. Personally, I think proteome editing is going to be bigger than genome editing. And that's a big, bold statement to say, but I think that it's going to change the way we view therapeutic development.
And you did mention, like, it's technically all these diseases are actually impact on the protein itself.
Correct.
So, but what's where are we at with this phenomena? Are we already in trials for certain treatment or disease types?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Think about everything that Novartis or Pfizer or Merck or any pharma company they develop. They do one thing. They find a protein that causes a disease, and they make a small molecule chemical that binds to it. That's it. That's literally all of pharma is described in that one sentence, right? So really the idea of protein targeting or protein editing, if you want to say it, has been around for a while. But the problem is that most of the proteins that they go after are very easy to go after. They're proteins that have very good structures. They're proteins that have regions that are easy to lock onto. But the proteins that we go after are not that. Like if you think of any cancer, most cancers are driven by proteins that are really weird. And so while pharma companies have taken these drugs into the clinic and have done well, those drugs usually are not very specific to the disease. And therefore you see a lot of toxicity. Chemotherapy is not the best, right? We know that there's problems. So we hope to build the much more specific therapies. So to do that, Vivek, in terms of what the progress is, I co-founded a company called UbiquiTx a few years ago that translates the technology we've built to specifically target and remove proteins. We've translated that and are right now in a lot of preclinical testing. So we're not yet to a clinical trial, but we're in preclinical testing to continually and hopefully develop that product further and maybe enter a clinical trial in the next few years.
So can you go slightly deeper in explaining this, how this works? So this is you have developed a protein-based therapeutic, basically a degrade and understand what these proteins are and how it's impacting to the level.
Correct.
And that's the tech piece of it. Is that
Correct.
Okay. And so who is going to use this application? This will be handed over to research labs or pharmas, and then they are able to make whatever they are making from there more targeted to the protein, instead of right now it's a little bit wider.
Exactly, right? And so I think what you can think about it in a few steps, right? And in my research lab at Duke, we developed the algorithms that can say, okay, you're working on this disease, you're working on this disease, you're working on this problem. We can take your targets, right? We can put it into our algorithms that we develop, our generative algorithms. And the algorithm's goal is to produce peptides or molecules that can hit that target. And so we can give those molecules to researchers to study their proteins. We can also license some of those binders or some of those molecules to pharmaceuticals, to biotechs. But the third option, Vivek, that we've taken is to develop it ourselves into our therapeutic, right? Companies like UbiquiTx can say, I'm going to focus on this disease or these 3 diseases. And so we are going to internally develop the technology and hopefully bring it into a clinical trial ourselves. And so I think what you said is all of those are correct, right? We can do it ourselves. We can provide it as a research tool, but we can also help other people solve their problems using this proteome editing technology. That's the beauty. It's very broad.
So who else is involved with you in this company? How big is this operation for this company?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. We have another scientific founder, another professor. His name is Matt DeLisa. And then we have a few business co-founders, Matthew Barnett and Luis Camargo, who are who have much more experience in industrial markets. And so we are able to partner the scientific team with the experiment or with the more business team. And so that you have 2, arms pushing the company forward. It's hard, right? Pharmaceutical development takes time, requires money, and so I think that we've faced our ups and downs, but the hope is that this technology will eventually go and get into humans one day. But that's been slow. Unlike Gameto, Vivek, which currently Gameto is in a phase 3 trial for IVF, for actual fertility treatments, that has really gone very fast. UbiquiTx is still moving towards their first clinical product.
Let's talk about Gameto now. And you said, which is tackling female reproductive longevity and menopause. So what made you focus on this problem? And And I read you're close to eliminating menopause as a concept through this. Is that correct statement?
Yeah.
And go into that and explain us what exactly it does, where you stand right now.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. And so Gameto's story is very interesting. So when I was a grad student, I was working on CRISPR, right? And gene editing obviously has a lot of applications. But, one of the technologies you saw was becoming really big was this idea of using stem cells for regenerative medicine, right? This ability to say, my heart or my lungs are deteriorating. Can I regenerate lung cells and lung tissue? Could I regenerate a new knee? Whatever you want. And so stem cells are those beautiful, really interesting cells at the beginning that can give rise to these new cell types. So it was easy, right? Like people have developed methods to go from stem cells to cardiomyocytes, to go to neurons, to go to other cells. Not that difficult. But the hardest cell type to make was germ cells, oocytes, right? Eggs, sperm. Those are the hardest cell types, if you had to say. And so I was really curious. I was like, well, what I want to do is I want to be able to make cells in the reproductive system, right? Because those will have wide-ranging applications for fertility, for children in the future, for women who want to give birth. And so, but I went to a professor at Harvard. His name was George Church. He's one of the most famous professors in the world. I told him I wanted to do this. And he was like, I want you to do this, but we need some money to do this, right? And so I was like, okay, fine. So what we ended up doing was, I was put in contact with a really amazing entrepreneur. His name is Martin Varsovsky. He'd started a lot of companies. He's actually one of the founders of a big fertility clinic. He flew me down to Philadelphia and he was like, okay, let's do this. Let's make, ovarian cells from stem cells, right? Reproductive cells. But you should start a company, right? And for me, I was like, great. But, I really wanted to stay as an academic. Like, I really just wanted to be a professor. I said, let's do the work at Harvard. Let's do the research at Harvard, but then we will license the technology back to Gameto. And so we did that work. Martin and I went out and raised some money, put that money back into Gameto, put that money into Harvard, did the work, and then licensed patents back to Gameto. And then once we had those patents and we had the technology built out, we brought on a really amazing CEO, Dina Radenkovic, who's been the leader and really the visionary. She's really, she's a co-founder of the company and has led the company to really great heights. She said, we had been working on making oocytes from eggs from stem cells. She's like, well, no, let's not do that. Let's make ovarian cells that can mature eggs for IVF. That was probably one of those, like you asked, Vivek, one of those breakthrough moments that she suggested. And we were able to raise a large Series A, got all the resources. They've now developed that technology at the company. And, we have a baby that was born, like I said. We're in phase 3 trials. And this is all thanks to Dina's work, as well as Christian, who was a grad student who worked with me at Harvard. So overall, the story is very interesting, but in reality, what really was the exciting technology was this ability to go from a stem cell to an ovarian cell. And guess what? In fact, the reason why we were able to do that, it was an algorithm that predicted what those proteins were that we could put into a stem cell and could make them into ovarian cells. So back to the proteome editing, the genome editing, or the cell engineering, the same concept applies. Develop a good algorithm, use it to search for solutions, find the solutions, put them in the lab, and you'll be able to maybe make a baby or, cure a genetic disease or, solve cancer. I think all of these possibilities are there.
Wow. So, this is bigger than you're making it, first of all. So what you're saying is, just to rephrase this at Gameto, is like now there is this possibility to have reproductive ready, and for IVF, the cells ready
Yeah.
for basically to deliver. That's what it is.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's not, these cells can be utilized for any female patient undergoing IVF, right? They can take their eggs may be not good, and therefore they cannot have children, but they can put those eggs with our cells, and those cells are natural, right? These are cells that have the hormones needed for the eggs to be better. And once those eggs have matured, then, you can do very successful IVF, right? IVF fails a lot of the time because the eggs are just not very good. And so
Yeah.
we can convert bad eggs or not great eggs into good eggs for fertilization. So it's a off-the-shelf product. The FDA has thankfully cleared a phase 3 IND. And so we're now going to hopefully cross that last barrier, but it's going to be exciting. And I think it's a technology that will benefit a lot of people.
How far do you think it will take from here to market after this trial?
I don't think it's going to take long. Look, I'm probably the wrong person to ask. I'm the one who went back to academia and decided to operate in the ivory tower, right? But I do think that Dina, Christian, and the entire team are pushing very hard and, very efficiently trying to set up the stage for the clinical trial, but also has a great team of clinicians and fertility clinics working with them to do it. So, the hope is in a few years, like every IVF clinic has the Gameto product, the Fertilo product, as we call it, on their shelves. I'm really excited. Again, all thanks to the work of that team at the company.
Well, it is. Is there a success metric too, based on data that you have? Like once you have it, it's what's the success on the?
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna find out, right? In terms of course, the team has worked on different organisms, right? Using this in, other animals to see if the system will work there prior to converting into the human context. And so while we've seen a few examples of successes, right? Healthy baby Mia was born a few weeks ago. I think we're going to have to see in the phase 3 trial what the rate of success is in the human context. It's really hard. See, the thing about working in the reproductive system, as opposed to, like, say, the cardiovascular system or the neuronal system or nervous system, is that the only way to evaluate whether it works is to actually see the baby being born. And so we're going to that's why we are in this phase 3 trial. But all data so far, again, because of the team, has shown that this is going, there's a good chance, fingers crossed, that this is going to work.
Now, very consumer facing question here. So what would happen to the cost of IVFs? Would it go up or go down with this?
Well, I think one thing to think about is that the failure rate of IVF is very high, right? So, while IVF itself can be expensive, what's more expensive is if it doesn't work, right? And it's very normal, for women to undergo multiple rounds of IVF just to have their baby. And so I really think the cost reduction is going to be the efficiency, right? Hopefully in a single round of IVF, you're going to have a high chance that there's going to be a healthy egg, fertilizable egg in the population. And if that's the case, then one round of IVF, for whatever that costs, can cost up to $10,000 for some patients. You only will have to do that one round. And that's something that we cannot control, right? We cannot control how, insurance costs and all of that. All we can control is that it works. And I think if it works in one try, women don't have to go and pay another round of IVF, and really can, make it a financial burden to have a child.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, right now, based on market data, I think the average is around I think 3 or 4 attempts to even get there, which means on an average, current price for typical IVF is between 12,000 to 15,000 for just one. So people are spending 45 to 50 grand right now.
Yeah.
On an average to get it across the line and to be successful with that. But if that can be of that accuracy, or that thing that it can reduce to only one kind of successful attempt, this is a huge saving just overall. And not just in money, but also time and emotionally, this is takes a big burden off.
Absolutely.
Yeah. really exciting. We'll keep tabs on how this is going and keep
Great.
us updated on this.
Thanks.
Uh, Now, going from professor to biotech founder isn't an easy transition by any means. So, what have been your biggest lessons while you're building these companies? You know, and where you're still involved.
Yeah, no, it's actually something that I have to think about because, it's not, you know, most people, like when I was in grad school and postdoc, a lot of my fellow graduate students at MIT or my fellow postdocs and graduate students at Harvard, they went out and they created a great technology that, you could equate it similarly to our gene editing technology, our proteome editing technology, cell engineering technology, but they went out and started a company and they went out to run it themselves. Right. So they said, all right, I'm going to run the company that I founded, which is really normal. If you can imagine, it's their company. They started it. They raised the money for it. The decision I made was that I was not going to do that. Right. I was going to found the company. I was going to support the company scientifically for as long as they needed me. Gameto, doesn't need me too much anymore, but, UbiquiTx may. And then I'm going to, once the technology has matured enough that I, as a scientist, as a professor, right, as a researcher, don't have the business acumen to push it and, manage a large, 50, 60 person company, I then say, well, who is in the best? We have a CEO, like in Gameto is Dina, our leader, and we also have one at UbiquiTx. It's their job now to take the company further, and I'm here as support. So the lesson that I learned was that I should do what I'm good at, right? If I tried to go and run the company and I'm not good at it, the Gameto may not be where it is today, right? But I said, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back and I'm going to go back to the academic lab. And guess what? I can start 20 more companies, right? I have a list of projects right behind me right now. Each one of them could potentially be an exciting new company, I think. And that's the beauty of, I think, an academic job for me, is that my ability to prototype across many different problems, gene editing, proteome editing, cell engineering, and be able to create solutions for all of them. And if those solutions are useful, spin out a company. But if I spin out a company, bring in people who are experts and who are amazing at it to run those companies. And so I think that is a situation, that is a placement that I'm much happier with, rather than putting all my eggs in one basket and saying, I'm going to only work on this one technology and make it a company. So I just said, I'm not good at this, Pranam. I'm not good at this. Let the experts do it. And I'm going to do what I'm good at, which was science and ideas and coming up with new technologies.
Okay, makes sense. I mean, when I was at B school, they taught me like work on your core competencies, then your core, not competencies, because they're going to make your life just more like you're more valuable with your core competencies, right? Yeah. So, and that is a big thing. And but also, I think it's like also not many people are emotionally able to give when they're building companies. So I'll give credit to you for that, because that's not an easy feat to do it. And like making sure like when to step back or step out is almost like that goes to self-awareness. So I'll give you credit for that, for making it. Was it hard enough for you, or was it like naturally to you, like, okay, this is what it works?
It was not necessarily natural. Of course, felt like I was letting go of a technology that I care so much about. But when I saw, like, I still use the Gameto example. When I saw how well, Dina had been, with us from the beginning, right? She's a co-founder, and to watch her like take it and actually do something amazing, you feel prouder of the technology in that context than you did if I did it myself and I messed up, and I did. And so who knows? Maybe I would have succeeded, Vivek, and ran not Gameto, definitely not, but maybe another company successfully. But I took the bet that I wasn't the person for that job. And I actually just listened to myself. My whole dream, my whole life was to be a professor. Like I was so close to leaving that and say, you know what? I should just go run a company, right? Because I have this idea, I should just do it. All the money that's in a company is way more than I could ever raise in an academic lab. Why not do that? But from a young age, I was like, I just love sitting, being with teaching students, thinking about new ideas and prototyping new technologies. I just love that kind of environment. And therefore I said, nope, just go and be a professor and start companies and work with people to spin them out.
Fantastic. Yeah. I'm sure you will have more companies coming out of this when you've done this. So this is probably a net positive for us as a society. So that's going to be good. We'll keep an eye on that. But let's talk about a little sensitive topic here. So, obviously there are ethical implications of gene and protein editing.
Yeah.
Do you see the risks of misuse or unintended consequences? Where you stand and how cautious you are?
Yeah, of course, right? I mean, I think if Vivek, if you came to like my lab and I taught you, I think you would easily figure it out how to do gene editing. Like I could show you the experiment. You would clearly see how this could get into the wrong hands because it is not that hard to learn. I mean, a person who has no background could probably figure out in like a month how to edit a gene. And we saw that, right? We saw, a few years ago, we saw a Chinese scientist who decided to edit, and there was, others. There was another scientist in Russia, and I've seen even in America, right? People who said, "Let me go and edit human embryos and impart new traits in those human embryos." That by itself, that's not a malicious intent. That's just I want to, fix a genetic disease in an embryo. But just as easily as you can do that, you could say, well, I'm going to mutate this DNA sequence to be pathogenic, to be a very dangerous virus. It's very doable. And what's going to make it even more doable is AI, right? We think that, AI is having general artificial intelligence or, is going to be what's going to be danger to the world. No, I think it could be AI designing the most pathogenic virus in the world. Who knows, right? Honestly, I feel like it could happen right now if using some of the current AI tools. And so I think the difficulty is going to be controlling the access to technology that is widely powerful and controlling people's behavior when using those technologies. It has to be a concerted effort in the community, right? I have other professors and scientists that I work with saying we're going to be safe in how we do it, but also communicating the right rules and regulations of safety to the broader public. I'm actually less worried about gene editing. I think gene editing will be fine. I don't think people are going to start gene editing, everything and making the dangerous things. I think really what's going to be dangerous is our ability now to from scratch design new molecules. I design new molecules with generative AI for therapeutics. But why therapeutics? It could easily be, viruses or, some like a toxin, right, that could kill people. That's something we have to be very careful about. And I'm worried about that. And I don't know how we can predict that that's what someone's going to do. We could probably prevent AI models from knowing prompts, right, from blocking prompts. But it is actually what I think will be the most dangerous thing is the ability of AI to create very, very, very dangerous molecules. Because if we don't solve that, this could all end very, very quickly.
Yeah, exactly. So that's something, who knows what will happen and how fast, right? Like you don't know. It is something I have no idea how we will stop it. Like you said, maybe you can stop the prompts, but
well, maybe the one thing is because we can create all of these drugs and therapeutics fast because of AI. Maybe we just have to be really ready that when we have a a virus come, we can quickly design an antidote for that virus. Actually, some of our recently published work was we showed that we could use our proteome editing technologies to degrade viral proteins that allow infection of cells. That was actually via AI. So in reality, we're like ready. It's of sorts. So if like a new virus comes, we can quickly design a drug that could basically, if a patient got that virus that someone created, we could quickly design an antidote and cure. So we may have to fight power with power, fight bad generation with good generation, if you can imagine. I think AI is going to have much broader implications than just text, image, video, and artificial general intelligence.
Yeah. So I guess what you're trying to say is, because if this can happen, that means we can also have the faster response to it, and that's going to work in our favor in that way.
I agree. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Last two fun questions of are more outside of professional and academia. So we heard that you founded an MIT music group
Yes.
called String Theory. I love the name, by the way. How does music influence the way you think about science?
I think it's something that has always been a big part of my life. My twin sister and I started to play the cello. I play the cello. She plays the violin. We started to play those when we were 3. And you can look in the newspaper of my hometown in Georgia, and you could see pictures of me, my twin sister, and 2 other 3-year-olds. We were playing a quartet, by string quartet. And that was actually something that I really enjoyed, even when I grew up and went to high school. We actually, that same group, those same 4 3-year-olds, we actually ended up sticking together and playing wedding music at weddings, at events, at concerts. We were always kind of stuck together. And so when I went to college at MIT, I had to say what type of music was really fun for me. I'm no longer, have time to play in an orchestra. I'm, doing science, right? It takes a lot of time. So I really enjoyed, Vivek, playing pop music, like, music that everyone kind of just likes to listen to, but like converting it into string music. And so when we ran the quartet at MIT, I was like, well, let's take, popular music that everyone likes and let's make them be played by a violoncello. This has been done before, but we were able to do that on campus. And for me, so that was just a great outlet, because, when you're a scientist and you're, designing technology, your brain is on 100% all the time. I'm literally just having to think through problems. Some of my students are, designing proofs, right, for different algorithms. Some are like optimizing animal work protocols. Like, I have to like really be mentally nimble, but music is one of those things that can just like smooth that out, right? Instead of these high spikes of intensity, I really enjoy just the ability to first to listen, but also to play and to arrange music as an outlet where my brain can almost relax, but enjoy itself at the same time. And so I'm really grateful that my parents give me that ability to appreciate music, but also that I was able to continue that in college at MIT. And even now, I still, go home. I have my little cat, and she and I will, I'll play music, and she'll sit and listen, and we have a good time. It's very fun.
Yeah, great. So one last question. So tell us, this is a fun question I ask every guest, and tell us about a personal thing that no one in your professional circles knows about you. And this is your chance to tell the world. And
okay.
Be anything that you think is appropriate, but of course, this is your chance to let the world know.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. I think, I don't know, it could be you can take this in a very positive or a negative way, but, I can come across as very, super confident, right? Like, I feel like there is this unjustified sense in my brain that I can solve any problem, right? Because I'm like, why can't I be the one who cures genetic diseases or, cures cancer, solves all these problems? Like, I should be able to do it. But, at the end of the day, even as a professor and starting a few companies, one thing I don't tell a lot of people is that you really question whether, you get really nervous. I can say when you meet people who are who have all these expertises that maybe you feel like you're just kind of like a bad version of, right? So this sense of self-doubt can be very creepy, and I don't communicate that ever, because I feel like if I say, hey, I don't know if I know this, or I don't, I think I'm like not the right person for this job, I feel like people will not believe in me. But if anything, Vivek, it's actually given me a lot of ability to say, okay, I'm not that good, right? I may not be perfect in all these areas that I need to be, but that has helped me to find good people, good students, good, business folks, good everything, and say, hey, let's work together. I have my ability, you have yours. So I know it sounds that, but I really do carry a lot of maybe some self-doubt, that even though I've been able to solve a lot of problems, I may not be able to succeed. But at the end of the day, it's a vulnerability that I have to accept about myself and still push forward. That's not the most fun answer, but I do think that it's something that good to get off your chest, right? Like to say.
Yeah, I mean, somebody who is just 32 and been through such a great path as you are, I think it's just, I would say, like, only again, I like to call it self-awareness, that to even express it in this way and acknowledge that that you even have insecurities. So
Yeah.
that is just human, but also, like, obviously, like you said, you in your field, especially in your field, you probably can't tell this thing that when you feel it, otherwise this won't look. It will just diminish the confidence of everyone else.
Exactly. I mean, part of right? Part of biotech or companies is convincing other people that you can do what you tell them they could do. Grant agencies for research, via venture capitalists for companies, anything. It all comes with, do I believe this person has the ability to do this? And for me, it's proving that, right, by showing some successes, but also, cultivating a sense of confidence and knowledge that if the problem came to you, you could solve it. Right. So yeah, it's tough. It's like, I'm happy. I've been very fortunate to have some successes, but I think there's still a lot of problems to be solved. And I want my students, I want the people around me, and we want to together be able to solve those problems.
Thanks for sharing your journey and all the cool things you have worked on, you're working on. I think we need to keep in touch and keep a check on your progress and how all these companies are doing, and also what new companies are going to come out from your lab. Let's keep in touch. But thanks again for your time. I really appreciate it. And of course, we will share. If people want to get in touch with you, how can they get in touch with you? Tell us about that. Yeah. And also, of course, we'll put the links to both your companies, and any other link that you want to put us, we'll put it. So how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, please. And I'm really open to people reaching out if they found this conversation exciting, if they find the work we're doing exciting, or they just want to listen and support it. Easy way is reach out to me on LinkedIn. My name is Pranam Chatterjee, as Vivek mentioned. Also, feel free to email me. If you go to Duke University and type my first name, you'll find it. I'm very easy to find. So please reach out. I'm always happy to chat. And if there's a problem that you think, the technologies that we're building can solve, I'm really excited to listen to it. I'm not a dogmatic in that case. I think that we're really open to solving a lot. So thank you, Vivek, for having me on. And I will send you the links, and hopefully people can get in touch that way.
I appreciate it. Thank you.